Moving Iron Podcast is proud to be part of the Global Ag Network. The network is live, so check out globalagnetwork.com for more details and updates. Now on to the show.
Moving iron in the 21st century. Hard-working people working hard for you and me. Moving iron time and time again. Through the years you'll find us here. Moving iron.
Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Tax Moves with Glen Birnbaum. Glen, how you doing this morning?
Hey, good, Casey. It's been a little while.
It's been a little while. I mean, the old tax code out there has been simmering down. There's not as much craziness going on out there.
Not as much happening, or maybe I didn't want to bore all the listeners.
So we were talking to get started here with, and you had talked about there's going to be some changes in the tax form from what we've seen traditionally here, and then all of a sudden there's a new one. They're doing away with the postcard that was just wicked efficient to start with. Now we're gonna move to an actual tax form. So Glenn, talk about the changes you have going on there in the old tax form, bud.
So we'll have some visuals here today for the viewers. So 2018, we had this interesting thing where it was basically a half page, so there's a lot of wasted space here, you see.
All right.
Nothing happening. So, and there was actually no numbers on this first page. Kind of interesting. And so it was kind of a struggle to explain to clients what was going on. We had several clients say, you didn't send us the form, or because if you go to page 2, then this is where all the numbers were, but again, not using half the page. So this was the postcard, basically 5.5 by 11 was kind of the deal there. So that was 2018. It was a brand new form. In all prior years that I know of, it was a full page. So 2019 draft form came out a few weeks ago, and I guess they didn't want to go to a full page. They basically added about 2/3 of a page. So instead of a half page, you see 2/3 of a page. So they added about 2 inches.
Less room for notes.
So, but you'll see there's actually numbers on here, and there's actually the bottom line on page 1 is actually taxable income, which is kind of nice. So we kind of like this, tax practitioners, because it's a little more easy to understand. Things are a little wider even, So, and then they did add a couple lines. They actually added a separate line for capital gain or loss, whereas before that was all buried on these schedules. So you might remember this. They basically really simplified the return to get to the postcard, but then added 6 numbered schedules that kind of weren't there before. And those are all on a half page. So they took the capital gain or loss off like this schedule 1, and they put it back on page 1. So, it doesn't change any of the calculations, but it's a more traditional return. So on the back you have the signature, as the final kind of line on the return. So kind of a more traditional return. Now these are draft forms. They're taking comments, but I would expect this to be probably pretty close to what the final version will be. Mm-hmm. Now here's the other interesting thing. There's a new form, Casey. It's called the 1040 SR.
Look out. New form.
What does SR stand for?
Super rough. That's what it's like doing taxes.
Yeah. Senior.
Oh.
If you're over 65, so what they basically did is they basically just took this 2/3 of a page and kind of expanded it so it's like a whole page. And so it's like a little easier to read. And this was one of the mandates that came out of tax reform was they were supposed to kind of make it easier on the seniors. So if you're not age 65, you can't use this 1040 SR form. So that's
so what's the difference there? So it's just that's a more trimmed down version of what you got.
Just bigger, like a larger. It's the Reader's Digest large print version or something.
Oh, okay. It's like the jitterbug of tax returns.
It has a little more explanation. Actually, there's a couple more tables and things. So,
right on. Okay.
So anyway, that's our government at work. But the 5.5 by 8 postcard has kind of gone away, right? And
back to 11.5 by 8.5 now.
By 8.5 or whatever. So for us, we enter everything into the software. We don't, what the output is. We're not really, obviously we're focused on the end result. How it actually prints out is we're not really that concerned, but it was, again, as I said earlier, it was a little more difficult to explain, to our clients, there were tax return, because a lot of things were buried on other pages, and okay, we got to go back to this schedule. And that's where this is at. It just wasn't intuitive. So
right. That's taxes in general, Glenn. Yeah, it's just not intuitive.
There were situations. Let me just check here, where you were just supposed to like shove, and I use that term kind of loosely, but you were just supposed to shove like amounts that didn't fit on the return. They didn't have their separate line, just like put them into like a subtotal. So the actual tax return would not even actually add up or foot if you looked at the lines, because they didn't have the right amount of lines. They just said, well, just do a subschedule and just put this amount in there. So it was just they just tried to squeeze it or put a round peg in a square hole or something. So overall, we're pretty pleased with this new format, and we think it'll be a little easier for taxpayers to understand how their tax picture all fits together.
That's so well. Hey, as long as it's easier and guys like you can understand it, that makes it great. But it's still taxes, bro, and it's over my head. I can tell you that. That's why I hire someone to do my taxes.
That's a good plan.
So, all right. So that's good. Sounds like we're going to start utilizing the whole piece of paper now. So just half of it, and we're going to have less. But the bad thing about it is, Glenn, you got less space for notes at the bottom. So you're going to have. That's right. Yeah. You got to figure that out. Yeah. But good thing though, we're going to be a little more intuitive, a little easier to use. Mm-hmm. You had a tweet out. I can't remember when you put it out a day or two ago about the number of regs that were out there actually being reviewed, and it's down to 2 now instead of a laundry list. Now, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, this was a new thing that the Office of Management and Budget, OIRA, it's called. They were kind of charged with, hey, why don't you review these proposed regulations that Department of Treasury, IRS, is writing, just to kind of make sure there's no significant, economic impacts or what have you. And so it put in an extra layered review into the process, which then delayed, the release of proposed regulations. So I think at one time, there were 13 that were actually under review, and now there's only 2. So certainly good news. There's still a number of regulations that have kind of been proposed. There's been a public hearing, but then we're still waiting on final regulations. So they really fast-tracked the 199A, the regular 199A, not the grain glitch stuff. But, that proposed regulations were in August. The hearing was in October, and then final regulations were released in January. So that was very, very quick. Other ones on like bonus depreciation have not been finalized. The interest regulations have not been finalized. So there's a number of ones. They've released some of the international rules here in the last, I guess, few months. So, but yeah, there's still a number of final regulations that they need to release. And then we should be coming up on the end of the comment period for the grain glitch fix regs that last I looked, I think I looked a couple days ago, no one had put in any comments in yet, but and there's not a public hearing, at least at this point, scheduled. So still a number of uncertainties, in particular with some of our larger clients regarding interest expense, and particularly our manufacturing clients. And we're coming up on, if we've extended those returns, which we generally have, if we weren't sure of the rules, the deadline for an extended partnership or S corporation return is September 15th. So, we're getting there. We're getting closer. So, we've maybe pushed those off and said, hey, we're going to wait until we know more information. But if we don't get that information, we're going to have to make a decision, go ahead and file, and then be prepared to amend it, right, if guidance comes out later. So
what's your over-under, Glenn? Is the China trade war going to get fixed first, or the 199 grain glitch going to get fixed first?
Probably, unfortunately, the grain glitch, yeah. So I don't know.
They've been going on about the same amount of time, so
that is true, yeah.
So I just didn't know who was going to win that race.
Yeah. So yeah, we're it'll start heating up here in the next few weeks, where we've got to start paying attention to our September 15th is kind of the entity deadline to get K1s out, and then you've got October 15th is the personal tax return deadline. That still seems a ways away, doesn't it, Casey? October 15th. It's
not that far.
That's a long time, but
yeah.
No, I know.
I mean, in tax terms, that's not that far, and in normal people terms, it's a ways. So,
yeah.
But hey, man. What's the weather out like there right now? I know you guys have gotten hammered with wetness and rain and everything else.
It's cooled back off. About a week ago it was real hot. Now it's cooled back off. I just looked. I think it was maybe yesterday. There was kind of a drought monitor came out, and actually, there's kind of a circle that pretty much is around Logan County, which is where our family farms, kind of pretty much in the center of the state. And that there was a bit of a dry patch in there in the middle of May that they didn't get some of those rains, and now it's kind of a light yellow. So maybe a bit of a slight drought situation.
Right.
Not bad yet, but with the cool weather will help.
So if you folks that don't know, Glen is in Peoria, Illinois, and that's where his office is at, and his family farm is just not too far from there. But so what's the crop look like?
It'll sometimes roll up some of this later planted corn. We got some corn in say May 16th, 17th, 18th. That had tasseled and has tasseled, and it's some of the early June corn. It's just starting to tassel. So, but overall, we feel pretty good about the situation. Definitely a few wet pockets and things, but we didn't get drowned out too much. But it's just going to remain to be seen. Obviously, the beans are. All of our beans are planted like June 4th to 10th kind of range, and they're pretty small, pretty short. So
that's kind of what I've been hearing across the landscape when it comes to soybeans. There's not a lot of seems like there's not a lot of optimism there with the old soybean crop this year, but who knows? Speaking
of Peoria, so Casey's coming to Peoria next week. We're gonna get to visit face to face for the first time.
I'm super jacked. This is going to be cool. So I get to meet a guy that I know. Tour. There we go.
Give you the full tour. The MFP2 payments, those numbers,
those rates
just came out yesterday. Just as a reminder from a tax perspective, those are, if you receive those payments, you've got to show them as income. You can't, we've talked about this before, you can't elect to defer those like a year, like say you can with crop insurance in certain circumstances,
Right.
We've talked about that on previous podcasts. So you just have to be aware the first payment is supposed to come middle August. Is that right, Casey?
Right. Yep.
And then, there could be another round in November. And then I think they said the last round would be in January, which we would prefer that because if you remember last year, first round was depending on when you filed, obviously, but late October, early November. And then the last round was like last week of December, and it potentially messed up a few tax plan. We planned on, hey, here's where we want to be, and then you get a direct deposit come in on December 30th, and all of a sudden. So this one, I think said November, and then not till January. So that should hopefully be a little more, certainty on what our income is. So I hope maybe they took some advice from some tax people that said, hey, don't send out a payment December 30th. So.
Right. Well, I think. And it's all dependent on, too, what happens with China. So if they can't got a deal tomorrow in the Shanghai deal they're talking about, it could all be done. They might get the first. I think the first one was guaranteed, but the second and third one were up in the air, depending on what happens.
I think you're correct.
But there again, that's about as clear as mud, too. So it's always love dealing with the government, man. They make everything so easy and seamless. It works so well all the time.
Indeed.
Well-oiled machine over there, right? Now I'm going to be in Peoria on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and hopefully Glenn and I can do one of these live, sitting in his office there, and I'm looking forward to actually meeting you. I mean, we've met a million times here, talked 1,000 times on the podcast here, but I've never actually physically met you, so I'm looking forward to that.
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, buddy. Well, if there's some folks want to reach out to you and ask you some tax questions, Glenn, how's the best way to do that?
Yeah, it's best just to call our office here at Heinold Banwart's phone number 309-694-4251, or you can always look me up on Twitter at Glen Birnbaum is my handle.
Right on, man. Good stuff out there, folks. Make sure you go follow Glenn. He's got lots of good tax advice and a lot of different things he throws out there, and there's always other accounts that jump in on there too. So it's a good source of information. But as always, make sure you check with your tax professional before taking anything, because this right here is just commentary, my friends. So you want some, not that Glenn doesn't know what he's talking about, because the guy's a genius, smartest tax guy in America right there. But make sure you talk to your trust but verify. That's exactly right, Glenn. So Glenn, take care of yourself until next week. Have a good one.
All right, Casey, thanks.
Thanks for listening to this edition of the Moving Iron Podcast, now part of the Global Ag Network. If you'd like to continue any of these conversations, you can hit me up on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at Moving Iron LLC. You can also send me an email at movingironpodcast@movingironpodcast.com. You can also visit the Moving Iron Podcast YouTube channel and watch Market Roundup with Chip Nellinger, Sean Hackett, and Angie Setzer. Also, Tax News with Glen Birnbaum. Please visit movingironllc.com. Here you can find information, details, and updates for the 2019 Moving Iron Summit in Nashville, Tennessee. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can leave a review and subscribe at iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, SoundCloud, and globalagnetwork.com. So until next time, let's go move some iron. This is Casey Seymour. Out.
Moving iron in the 21st century.